Hi there, today I'm just making a short video about chamomile, in particular the German chamomile. There are two varieties that I'm aware of. So there's the German chamomile, which is this one, and the Roman chamomile, which is kind of more apple-like scented. It's used more for aromatherapy and it's more of a ground cover, whereas the German variety, its habit is more upright. As you can see, it's more of a shrub. It's probably, this one is about almost a metre high. And it's not looking quite as nice as it usually does. This morning we had a bit of a light frost, so its leaves are a little bit curled in, and it has been harvested recently, so there are less flowers on it than there normally would be, but there's still some to harvest this morning, which I can show you how to do. And even just standing here, it's a bit breezy. I can still smell the flowers of this German chamomile. It's really beautiful. I started growing this only a couple of years ago, and this one, they usually die back when it's winter time, and this one has come up during springtime. The frost that we got was a bit of a late season frost, I suppose, but it was only quite mild, so it's hasn't affected it too much. But yeah, it's come back in springtime and it's in full flower, so I'm really happy I haven't had to reseed it into like seedling trays or anything like that and try and get it re-established. It's just like it's grown back from the roots from last year, which is brilliant. A lot less work for me. So there's a lot of people that talk about chamomile in the, aromatherapy kind of field. My mum, when I was a little kid, used to always make me chamomile tea when I had an upset stomach. And people do say it helps with bloating or nausea or gas or anything like that. It's also, apparently it's a bit of an anti-inflammatory and antibacterial and an antioxidant, would you believe? So it's really a great all-over plant. And as well as that, it's awesome for the beneficial bugs and insects. I don't know if you can see it because I've got a bit of an average camera, but there's just a native hoverfly that's hanging around. The bees are usually all over this too, but it's in fact the hoverflies I'm really noticing now that like it in particular. I just wish my camera could focus on them, that they actually are hanging around, but it is a little bit breezy. But they love it too, and so do I. So let's get picking. I've got just a container here, as you can see, old container, washed out, and what we'll do is the ones that are in full flower, we just pop off like that. When we go back inside, we can shorten the stem down, but for now, while it's while we're outside, we'll just rip them off like that, chuck them in the bucket, and when we go inside, I'll show you how to prepare them so they'll last on the shelf for next winter. For when we're sick, when we've got a sore throat, make some lovely tea with honey. If you're wondering, well, you're picking all the flowers off, what about the insects and the bees and whatever? It takes this plant like, half a day or less, and it will start pumping out new flowers. It's really, the more you pick the flowers, the more start growing again. And if you got it like a little kid, like a toddler, for a young primary schooler or even a teen, once they realise they can just pop the flowers off, some kids are really into this sort of thing. If they can harvest something easy and, they can even drink the tea too, if they've got an upset stomach. Of course, there's been heaps of scientific, experiments and documents, and, people have probably written their theses on chamomile because it's a plant that's been around for such a long time, like literally thousands of years from when the the pharaohs were running around and they were using it. So if you just Google chamomile, German chamomile or the Roman chamomile, there's heaps of documentation out there of what its uses are. So now the bush is looking a little bit bare and not quite as fancy, but as I said, within half a day, the new flowers, all these little flowers, they'll grow and mature quite quickly, and tomorrow we get to harvest them all again. So if we look inside the bush, it's quite a nice plant. I've got a little bit of a wire wrapped around the plant just to hold it upright, because we are a windy location here. So if I can just keep it around the plant to keep it upright, that just helps it so it doesn't get flattened out. I can't resist, I just keep picking them. Okay, so we're back inside now, and this is the unit I use to dehydrate my chamomile seeds, and I use this in fact for a lot of other things, drying out apple pieces and all sorts of things, but that can be in another video, I guess. Today we're talking about chamomile, so we don't need to use all of these levels. We probably only need to use one. So I'll take this all off and we can start layering on our chamomile. So we can just chuck a few on. I'm trying to work one-handed, so if we just sprinkle them on nice. And any of the bigger stemmed ones will just pop off the stems. We don't really need them, but you know what? I have left them on once and I made tea out of them and they were just fine. I didn't have a problem with the tea at all. But I'm starting to think, the ones that have got leaves on them, you know what? Let's get rid of them at least. So just spread them out a bit more. I forgot to talk about what sort of conditions my chamomile plant is living in. I'm sort of located in Australia, Victoria, in the north central region. So you know what? We do get frost in winter. Sometimes it can be as cold as below 5, -5. And in summer, we can easily get to 40 degrees. So we've got a bit of a tight window where we can grow chamomile. It doesn't like heavy frost, and it doesn't like 40-degree days either, or even high 30s. You really have to keep the water up to them if you want to grow it in those sort of really high temperatures. That's Celsius, not Fahrenheit. Let me be clear. And my soil is average. It's nothing fancy. I use a lot of my topsoil that I've got here on the farm, which is, nothing fancy either. It's got a bit of clay mixed in with it, but then I mix a lot of horse manure It's been mulched down for, let's say, 12 months approximately, and then I spread it onto my garden and I mix stuff like blood and bone in with it, pelletized chook manure that I've brought in, but also from my own chooks, their manure, and I just chuck that straight on, and people would complain about that you can't just chuck straight chook manure on, but you know, if you dig it in, my plants don't seem to mind it at all. Yeah, and they don't particularly grow too over the top leafy or anything like that. It's all just in moderation, isn't it? So, and then in summer I make sure I water the plants a lot more regularly, and in winter this German chamomile dies right back down to the ground, but I'm actually convinced that their roots sort of remain dormant under the soil, and then this plant in particular has really bounced back quickly, so in the same spot. So yeah, that's saying something. So that's them. They're all nicely spread out and they're ready to dry out. I'm going to put another layer on top, which was from the last couple of days that I've picked, my daughter and I have picked, and that's them. And they're reduced in size quite a lot. They're not ready yet, but their leaves have shriveled up, their petals, sorry, have shriveled right up. They've still got probably a few more days to go, but I'm going to speed them along now. These have just been air drying, but I'm going to speed them along with my dryer here that I've got, trusty dryer. I'm going to plug it in. Lovely, turn it on. It's going to get noisy. I'll just put it on the lowest setting. Yeah, they just need a little bit of a help along. They could be air dried outside, even though it's, you know, it's not a hot day today. It's only like about 16 degrees Celsius. So they could just dry out in the air, but I want to speed them along. I'll put them on the lowest setting and they'll just toddle along and dry out. Lovely. Okay, so this is a few days later when a bunch of them have been processed and dried out. You can see they're a lot more crunchier and shriveled up, and they fall apart really easily, and that's where the seeds are in as well. So now's the time to put them in a jar and save them for when you want to make tea. Look, I don't know how long they last with the process I'm about to show you. It might be they, last a few months. I've drank tea while storing them in this method a year later, and they've been fine. But you have to make sure that they're really extremely dried out, because you don't want them to go moldy while they're in the jar. Yeah, this is just the way that I save them. You probably could actually like vacuum seal them and freeze them to make absolutely sure that there's, if there is moisture in them still, that they're not going to go moldy if you've frozen them. But this is the way I dry them. So I use one of these old coffee jars, and I'll just tip them in like so, and as the days go on and I pick and dehydrate more, then I'll just keep adding to this jar. All the little crumbs can go in, the crumbs being probably the seeds, I'm assuming. So there we go, lovely. And what I do is put some rice in there. As I said, you don't have to copy me, this has worked for me. That actually, in my humble opinion, it absorbs any last bits of moisture in the air of the jar, or in the jar itself, or even in the flowers. So I've got quite a bit of rice in there. Yeah, lovely. So then the lid goes on, and Bob's your uncle. This isn't really an airtight jar. but it's good enough. I haven't had a problem with them, to be honest. So now I'll show you how I make tea using my chamomile. All right, so I've boiled my kettle and I've filled up my little tea ball thing. There we go. So I haven't even really filled it up completely full. It's only half full, maybe a dozen or so heads of chamomile, and that's enough. What you'll find with this fresh stuff is that it's actually a little bit more potent than the commercial tea bags that you buy at the store, because there's no other weird ingredients in it. That it's got no other leaves or stems or other herbs mixed in with it, or who knows what. And you know what? This is fresh stuff. This is freshly dried, and so it's obviously going to be a bit more potent and have more beautiful flavour and aroma. You can use the fresh stuff. I've done that before, but just for you guys, I thought I'd use the stuff that you've seen me dry out and jar. So I like to put some honey in with it. It doesn't need much because the chamomile, you know, it's a subtle flavour, and I feel like I like the flavour of the chamomile, not to be overpowered by the honey. Honey is also awesome for your health too, so I love adding it. It's a nice little bonus. And now we've got the hot water. Great. So I fill it right up and I let it settle in there and steep for, I don't know, until it's cool enough to drink. One thing I will say is, obviously I don't have the rice in with the chamomile. That doesn't need to go in there. So yeah, and you know what? You can't smell it right now, but I can, and it's beautiful. My kitchen smells really nicely of the chamomile since I've been ripping the stems off these little guys and putting them in the dehydrator and making the tea. It's beautiful. And, you know, as I said, it's a great herb that people use for aromatherapy, and I can really understand why right now as I'm smelling it. So cheers, guys. See how you go with growing your own German chamomile.